Oh, we're back to cold. A biting wind today. Oh, pigeons. We're advancing on Christmas, that's for certain. I've seen a lot of people putting the lights up who just put all of our trees up. I think we have about 5 different locations around the house. Take ages to put up, but they look good. I like seeing people's houses lit up. About trying to think now, some of my favourite Christmases. Most of them were when I got either a computer or a console. And before that, when I was a little kid, I remember one when I got BMX bike. And then before that, getting loads of Star Wars stuff. They were the best. Oh, they were good times. Squirrel. I was listening to the latest Retro Gaming Roundup podcast last night, listening to the Simon Butler's Dinosaur Pie segment. He's very good that he recommends a lot of indie games, particularly those that are old school, sort of platformer, pixel, or hand-drawn graphics. And there's a lot of them, they really are stunning. I put a few on my wish list to keep an eye on that he recommended. They're so good, and they're well worth checking out. Some of them haven't been released yet, but there are demos. And he's played the demo and recommended them based on that. So, yeah, they're really good. Well worth checking out. His podcast, that is, as well as the games. God, I hate that sun. You can never see where you're going. I say I end up looking through the viewfinder on my camera. The camera has better light filtering than the eyes. So, anyway, getting close to the park. I'll carry on there. And catch up with you all there. I will figure the topic for the day on the way there. So, I will see you there. So, today's topic, which kind of touched upon when I was doing a little walk down the lane there, is the value of indie games, especially in this day and age where the AAA market has very much imploded on itself, unfortunately. And I say that because there's still a lot of good stuff in the AAA space. You get a lot of very good games down the years have come out of that. But it's just, it's become too greedy. It became the victim of its own success. It's an old story, but it's one that's repeated quite a lot. And unfortunately, like I say, it's now got to that point where it needs to change dramatically in order for it to survive. But these big corporate game publishers, your EAs, your Ubisofts, your Activision / Microsoft now, they're all entrenched into a way of thinking that is led by their investors rather than the creators. Years and years ago, that's how they came about, was they were brought together by teams of developers that had left other companies. Activision being the prime case in point. They were ex-Atari employees that were disillusioned by not getting any credit for their work. And so they left and formed Activision. And they took risks. They created legendary games. And then they grew in size. And then people come on board that don't really know an awful lot about the games industry, but they know about making money and so on. And these people eventually, over time, ruin the company. They invest in, fewer games that they can continuously monetize. Bobby Kotick famously came out and said that. They ditched a whole load of games that were in development many years ago now, in the 360 PS3 generation, because Bobby Kotick said they couldn't exploit them. They couldn't exploit the game for monetization purposes or yearly updates. Other dev teams, other game publishers stepped in, got the games out there. A lot of them were good games. Many of them weren't. But the point is that these game studios, a lot of them ended up not getting the games out there that they had been developing, simply because of the fact that they couldn't be monetized continuously. And that was the warning. That was the real big start of it. Is people looking at the games, investing in the games, investing in these publishers solely with the intent of maximising a return on revenue, as opposed to maximising a return on creating a really good game, new ideas. And for a while it worked. These things always do work for a while. It worked in the sense that people were still buying the games because they hadn't grown bored of them yet. But once they did, that was it. That's kind of where we've been at, and it's come home to roost with a big bang this year with Call of Duty. It's not doing so great. It's people fed up of it. They want something different. The one thing that you have to do in all of that time when you're making these AAA games is you have to make sure that the quality is outstanding. You have to make sure that you're giving the players what they want. And like Activision with their Call of Duty, this current one, it hasn't. Now, will that mean that Activision are going to go away and call it a day with Call of Duty? Maybe, shelve it for a while? No, because it takes them a while to figure out that they're to blame. They'll convince themselves that it's other circumstances not relating to delivering a product that is not ultimately interesting, and a product that is boring and repetitive. They'll convince themselves it's not that, and they'll blame other market factors. They'll say things like, oh, it was just a bad game. They'll convince each other that it was just a bad game, and they sit around and they'll do the same next year. And then when that doesn't work, they'll probably try it again. And then maybe at that point they'll go, maybe we need to lay off Call of Duty for a year or two. Go back to the drawing board. But they'll be very slow. They're never ahead of the curve. They're always way behind it. If you look at, for example, the F1 game, for the first time in the F1 game's release schedule, they're not actually releasing a full game next year. They're just releasing an update, which is kind of interesting because of all the years to pick it, they've picked the year where there's actually significant changes to the cars. They're not just revisions of what's gone before. The cars next year are going to be quite considerably different. And that's the year that EA have chosen to release data discs. Well, I say data disc, that's what it would have been, to just release a download. And it's fascinating to me. It's fascinating. Because what you have with that is somebody actually using the brain for once. FIFA does not need a new game every year. It just needs a roster update and an update to the kits. That's it. And they do roster updates anyway. They do roster updates all the time for transfers and so on. All these things are reflective of changes that happen. All these things are reflective, of changes that happen throughout a season. So there was no reason why that couldn't happen with F1. You're basically going to have, what is there, 20 cars next year? Is it 22? I'm not sure. I know Cadillac's coming into the sport next year, but I don't know if they're replacing a team. And I know Audi, but I think Audi is just a rebrand of an existing team. So I think Cadillac is a new team and there's 22 cars next year. But you're only doing a model for 11 because the cars are paired off and are identical. So you got 22 cars, but there's only 11 varieties because the cars are paired. You got 2 drivers, 2 cars for each team. Now it's only like adding cars into an existing racing game, you know, that you would get in your DLC packs anyway. You buy these car packs, whether it's the likes of Forza or, you know, your Assetto Corsa games, you always get those car packs. So it makes sense. And it hopefully should give them a bit more time to actually refine the product that they've got. I don't understand why they've never done this before. Because it costs a lot of money to release a game. It costs less money to release DLC. And they trial runned it with the WRC game that EA had. They did an update, a season update for that. And that's what you should be doing. And then in the background, developing the next game, utilising advancements in technology, making improvements rather than just putting the same game out there. So I'm pleased to see that they're doing that. And hopefully that will start to become a trend, as people can't afford to keep shelling out premium price on AAA games every year for annual updates every year. You're going to get a drop off. Anyway, going back to what I was saying, so my little detour there. What you've got going on with the indie game space is a lot of it is truly great stuff. As the AAA is faltering, which it is, the indie games are stepping in and are stepping up, and it's not new. It's been like this for years. If you've chosen to ignore indie games, thinking that they're just going to be cheap rubbish, then you'll have been missing out on some truly fantastic titles. And there'll probably be some games that would surprise you that were and are indie games. Notably, games like Stardew Valley. It's one of the most successful games in recent years. It was released, what was it, 2013, 12 years ago? So quite a few updates. Yeah, I think it was 2013, or maybe it was 2012. Anyway, it's been out for a hell of a long time. It's sold remarkably well, and they've never charged for any updates or anything like that, DLC updates. None of it's been charged, and yet it's maintained a good user base, a lot of interest, and there's another big update coming for it. The guy's working on the Haunted Chocolatier is his next project, but he keeps going back to Stardew. Now, the guy, he's not exactly going to be short of cash. The game wasn't hugely expensive. It's sold by the truckload. It's been enormously popular. It's a pixel game. It runs superbly. It's extremely addictive. You can go into that game and just lose hours and not even realise it. There's loads of stuff to do in it. You know, when I was in hospital, I loved just popping into that game. It really did help pass that time. I had it on the Switch, and the really long, boring hours when you just lay in bed. You can't go anywhere because you've got a bloody tube stuck in you. Playing on that was great. Just time passed, it really helped. But that's just an example of how good indie games are and can be. I've probably put more time into that than going back and playing Doom, the whole version of Doom, which is just something I do all the time. Now, especially with the mods that are available with the sort of modern release of Doom, where you can go and get a stack load of mods to download and play. There's some really good maps, some pretty ones that are not so great, but there's a lot of really good mods in that. Some of them are massive. Some of them are bigger than the original Doom game, and they're free. Yeah, Doom's ancient, but it's still a really good fun game to play. I'm trying to see where that bird is. Can't see it. It's over there somewhere. Can't see it. But anyway, yeah, really good. You know, and there's loads of indie games. Games like Hollow Knight, Silksong, they're indie games. That might surprise some people, but they are. And quite often people get a little bit surprised by that. It raises a few eyebrows. People are like, really? It's an indie game? It's like, yeah. Gorgeous games, highly polished. An enormous amount of work went into them. And they're successful, they sell really well. And these investors, they just don't seem to grasp that. And those games are not coming back at you continuously trying to dive into your pocket all the time for more money, more money, more money. No, they're not. They value the player. They value your time. They're not locking off content behind paywalls in a desperate attempt to drag in more money from a £60 video game, or even in some cases now a £70 video game. They're not locking content away. They're not making you feel less than because you can't afford to keep buying season passes, and now very nefariously putting DLC on top of season passes. You know, the point of the season pass was you bought all the DLC, everything in one payment. They just keep adding. You don't get that with indie games for the most part. Some you do. But for a lot of cases you don't. In a lot of cases you just buy the game. I've been playing a game which is excellent called Clear Hot. And that is almost a modern reworking of Desert Strike. It's on early access. It was about £11 and it's superb. It needs a bit of work doing in some places, but it's in early access. And there's more chapters to come. I think the intention is to basically have a chapter for each of the original EA Strike games. The first one it's got the similar theme to Desert Strike. It's not a copy. There's differences, different settings, different story, different mission types. You've got a wide selection of helicopters that you can buy, so you're not just flying an Apache that you were in the Desert Strike game. I know they changed the helicopters in the games, but yeah, I mean, you know, you've got your Apache, you've got a helicopter that's very similar to Airwolf. You've got the big old Soviet Hind gunship. You've got the Chinook. You've got loads. You've got the Huey from Vietnam. Loads. It's great, it's a great game. I would much rather put my money to supporting that project than a big AAA game that is going to come out. It's going to be broken, it's going to have issues. When they do get it in a workable state, it's going to be absolutely laden with season passes and DLC out of the backside. You know, no matter how good or bad the game is, it doesn't matter. They're really hard-faced. A game can come out that is so broken that it drags up a lot of controversy and is almost unplayable. And quite often, the DLC has come out before the game's even been fixed. Which is, well, that's just bloody immoral. And there's been some rare cases where the fix has been included in the DLC. And the passion's just not there. Their primary focus, like I say, is to appease investors by selling huge copies of the game and huge amounts of its DLC. Too much is never enough for these people. They're constantly at your wallet for more. Look at Starfield, a game that was so many years in the making, was supposed to be Todd Howard's magnus opus. That's how you say it, magnum opus. Whatever, doesn't matter. Supposed to be his baby. People aren't bothered by it, but they come out wanting people to pay money for more DLC. Why? Nobody's playing it, or very few people. Wouldn't it have made sense to make it free to draw people in? If this is your baby, what would you rather have? Loads of people playing it, enjoying it, passing on the word about how good it is, which will then get more people to buy the game. Is that more important? Or is trying to wring as much money out of the handful of people that are playing the game, is that more important? I know which one I would rather have. If that game meant as much to me as what Todd Howard said it did. It can't mean that much to him. It can't. Because he's happy for it to go in, he's happy for it to rot away. The only time I see people talking about that game on social media are people berating it. Or talking about, people's critique of it. There's a rather famous outburst that a YouTuber did. I see more stuff relating to that than I do about the actual game being good or people enjoying playing the game. I don't see anything. And I follow, mostly my social media follows game companies and gamers. That's the bulk of it. But I see indie games coming out and it blows up. And I think it's really indicative of the fact that there's more people playing those games now than they are playing the AAA. Or certainly they're more prepared to talk about playing those indie games than they are about playing the AAA. Either way, the optics aren't great if you're somebody that's been making one of these huge games. These things, they die off so quick. The engagement dies off so quickly with the big AAA games. And that must be really concerning. If I was a developer, if I'd worked on Starfield, I would be really upset that more people talk about Oblivion and Skyrim, games that came out over a decade before that, games that are generations old in terms of consoles. We're going back to the PS3 and the Xbox 360 for Oblivion and Skyrim. look how successful the Oblivion remaster was. Although that seems now to have been abandoned with regards to updates. I believe there are still issues with it. I stopped playing it because it kept crashing. Now I understand that they might have fixed that, but I do think there's still issues. I did a quick look on the forum, the discussions forum on Steam, and people were still having issues with it. But it's been many months since there was an update. So what's going on with that, heaven only knows. But the point is, when that come out, that created more interest than Starfield. And when was that game? 2007, when it first come out. Think of all the memes that Skyrim had. There's none. Think of the content that was in Skyrim that, you know, I used to be an adventurer, but then I took an arrow to the knee. That became a meme for ages. It still gets dragged up occasionally now. What do you see with Starfield? Nothing positive. I don't know. But I see more. And long may that continue, by the way. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. I think it's a great thing. It shows there's quite a few of these indie devs are people that lost their jobs at big AAA studios, and they've gone on and said, no, I'm going to keep making games, what I love doing, free of the constraints of having to create content that does nothing but appease investors, not gamers, not the people that you're selling to, but the people that willingly put money into a studio and then make ridiculous demands on how much profit they want back. It's just not simply workable. Investors that have driven nail into the coffin of creativity. So, you know, when you have these big AAA studios laying all these people off, they can be a positive. If those people form small independent studios and they start to work on games that are a passion. Kinseed, ex-Lionhead developers who worked on Fable, they've actually taken ideas that were supposed to be in Fable that got ditched and put them into the Kinseed. It's a great little game. You just don't need to feel that, you know, developers shouldn't need to feel that it's the end. You can make it. Now, not everybody. It's the nature of the business. Anything creative, it's always hit and miss as to whether it'll land or not. Timing can be a thing. Timing is a big thing. It's a really big thing. There's some games that are great games but just came out at the wrong time. make games that are way ahead of their time. People just aren't ready. That's the nature of it. That happens with movies. Even big movies. Timothy Dalton, License to Kill, is a brilliant Bond movie. But when that came out at the time, the audiences weren't ready for it. They'd been used to Roger Moore. And that was a more light-hearted, one-liner, raised eyebrow Bond. It was still very good, but it was more light-hearted. License to Kill was a lot darker. Now, if that had come out today, it probably would have done amazing. Or certainly if it had come out at the time of Casino Royale or Skyfall, it would have done amazing, because they were a lot darker. It's just audiences weren't ready for it. And it's a brilliant film. If you've ever dismissed it, go back and watch it now. It's a great film. It's a really good film. But that's what happens sometimes. Good things can get buried because they just come out at the wrong time. It happens with games. It happens with music. It happens with films. Anything creative. There's a whole array of factors that go into success. And one of the key elements is timing. Hitting the sweet spot. Getting something released into the marketplace at a time where people are desperate for that thing. They might not even know it, but it scratches that itch. And they become massively successful. And indie games are not immune from that. What indie games do have in their favour is that they tend to be cheaper. They're lower risk. And that's why you do see a lot more risk taking. And as a gamer, if you're prepared to look into that, take time with it, you'll see, wow, it's a really good game. Well worth your time. Many years ago, with the Xbox 360, one of the best things they did was the Xbox Live Arcade indie games. And that was actively encouraging people, like bedroom coders, to make games and release them. And yeah, you had a lot of varying quality, but a lot of them were under £1. I think they were about 79 pence to buy these. They were really good, some of them. You're going to get some that aren't, but the point was, they were cheap and they were fun. They scratched an itch. You wanted a quick blast of a shoot 'em up, but didn't want to pay 40 quid for the privilege. I had a game I had loads of fun with. It's called the $1 zombie game. So we have a car coming in a no vehicles place. The $1 zombie game. That's what it was. It was $1. Yeah, $1 zombie game. There's a video up on my channel. It didn't even cost me $1. with the exchange rate, like I say, it was about 79 pence. I whiled away a few hours playing that. It was fun. And all it is just you're there in one arena fighting off wave after wave of zombies. It was cheap. It was cheerful. It was a great game for what it was. There was loads like that. And what it gave was people the experience, the important experience of not just making the game, but actually releasing it. Dealing with having to release a game on a platform. Of course, all that sort of fell by the wayside, as usual. It probably wasn't generating sufficient revenue for Microsoft because they're desperate for it, of course. Company that's on its last legs when it comes to revenue. But for a brief period, gamers were at the centre of the experience. But not just that, game developers. And in some respects, it kind of mirrored, it sort of mirrored Microsoft, mirroring like what Sir Clive Sinclair did. You know, putting a degree of power into the hands of the bedroom programmer, giving them a chance. From that you can get the next big thing. You get the next lot of entertainment. But, you know, that's where it should be. AAA studios, and I think I may have said this before, but they weren't that big a thing back in the day. They weren't that big a thing. Back in the 80s. Everybody started out indie. And they grew. But that's how it was. That's how it was. And Steam, GOG, Steam, places that offer a platform for these people to get their games out there, I think is great. And I think it's important that when we talk about the games industry not being great, it is in reality. I've said it myself, because we do tend to just look at AAA and go, right, that's it, that's what that is. No, it's not. The AAA is the tip of the iceberg. The indie games are everything underneath it. And that's what you should be looking at to judge. So it's worth just bearing that in mind. I think it's great. I think there's so many fantastic indie games out there from really creative people. Just give it a chance. Take time to have a look. Even if you don't have a gaming PC, I mean, in fact, many of them will run on pretty low-end PCs because they're pixels. They're not shifting huge amounts of polygons with complex lighting, but they still look great. The art style is still amazing. It's well worth it. So, I think that'll do for today. I don't know whether there'll be one tomorrow, because it's my monthly check at the hospital, so we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, get out there, get looking at indie games, give them a chance, see what there is. Keep an eye on the development of some that, you know, not due to come out yet. A few of the ones that Simon Butler mentioned are not even out yet, but there are demos. Give them a chance. What have you got to lose? It's not like we're inundated with amazing AAA games to play at the moment, are we? So anyway, like I say, I'll call it then. I'll see whether there's one tomorrow or Friday. We'll just have to see. Hopefully there will. And yeah, have a good day and take it easy. I'll catch you later.